Brian invited us to his house for the weekend.
Didn't he, really hurt you?
My lady, you're such a prepossessing sight. What in the Shakespeare does that mean?
Addison, how are things with you? I like the mustache.
Thank you. Yeah. Just just in time for Super Mario Galaxy to come out, or because that's what I'm about, I guess. No, I've literally had a mustache forever, and it just stayed. And I haven't had these glasses, but I'm too lazy to order contacts right now, so that's where we are today.
It's the life of a creative. You do what's convenient,
Yes.
you do what's in direct proximity, and if it's too much work, you're like, screw it.
Yeah, you're picking up what I'm throwing down. Exactly.
Well, so glad to be speaking with you. I am thrilled to invite you on the podcast. My name is Mark Chaffardini. Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course.
I love how mismatched this was. Mishmashed. It's like the Muppet Babies of a Benson and Moorhead joint. It's like a samurai love story set in the Scott Pilgrim universe. It's like Tarantino for the Gen Z set. And
Sure.
Touch Me is all that in a bag of potato chips. So that's my intro. That's my intro.
Perfect. Wow. Yeah. I never thought all those. I need to listen when this actually goes, live, because all of those things are exactly the way I would describe this movie. So perfect.
Excellent. If you're looking for pull quotes, if the poster doesn't have, the tagline, I got a million of them.
Listen,
so.
we can never have enough pull quotes, so.
Excellent. Well, I do like I said, a mishmatch, a mix up. And I almost think to myself, what would the world be with a mix of, say, The Mummy and Chef and Stand By Me and Godzilla? I feel like there's got to be something that it will pale in comparison to Touch Me. And I think that what's great about this film is it feels like, I remember Edgar Wright told me a long time ago, he said that our movies are a Trojan horse to focus on friendships and relationships. And I love that no matter how crazy it gets, no matter how many sugar-free lemonade packets there are thrown, it gets to two people connecting. So you have Mondrianed the modern friendship vernacular. So where did that come from? Talk about how those pieces fit together.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because this movie is based off of in the very strangest of ways, a friendship breakup that I'd went through, and I find that friendship breakups are actually funnily more painful than relationship breakups, and so I wanted to explore that through the lens of, I guess, tentacle sex, right? Because that's obviously the way you do it, but it is it is kind of loosely based off that, and also kind of related to my my living with obsessive compulsive disorder, which I think caused a lot of headache for me in the past. And then I watched a movie called The Untamed, which is a Spanish language horror movie about a tentacle monster who fucks people in a shack and makes them feel euphoric. And then again, going with the mishmash, I've been learning Japanese for 6 years, and became obsessed with Japanese cinema, specifically that of the 60s and 70s, these kind of exploitation films that are all about female revenge and all shot on theatrical style sets. And then all of that combination kind of burst together to form this codependent friendship movie that involves crazy practical effects, but at the heart is really just about a friendship breakup, and kind of where do you go from there, especially when you've been codependent for for a long time, and how do you move past that, separate and move on with purpose.
And I think purpose is a really good word to use, because I keep thinking of this part towards the end without spoilering it. The two characters go twinsies. They've finally gotten to a point of understanding, a similar common ground, even though their backgrounds are so disparate. So it's nice that the river has weaved itself together for this one thing.
Yeah. It is such a that is that's a funny way of putting that moment, as them coming together. You're not wrong, which is going to be really funny when people watch the movie, and then that's the moment you talk about. But it's true, right? I mean, just at that moment, whenever that moment is, they're in the thick of it. They have to band together to do blank. And well, it's a horror movie, so you inevitably like, there's only so many things that like cannot and
Mhm.
can happen, that I'm talking about here. But yeah, I think that's the best part. It's like realizing that there's a certain point where like all of the things that happen in the past, they matter, and you have flaws, and yet, like, and they're constantly butting heads with each other. But at the end of the day, like, there was a spark there, there was a love there. And that doesn't mean that you always have to be together for the rest of your lives, but it also doesn't mean that that time that you spent together is any less impactful just because you are ending up parting ways.
Sure. And, to quote the philosopher Confucius, or maybe someone else, deep love is never faked. And I'd like to just know, like, beyond the personal experiences of the
Yeah,
friendship breakup, like, are there
yeah.
other things that really fed this from a core, core part of Addison, that you could
Yeah.
let your heart
Yeah.
out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think like so the thing about obsessive compulsive disorder, which is what I deal with, is, a lot of people ask about the tone. They're like, why the fuck is this like this? And I'm just like, yeah, yeah, no worries. I got you. And it's kind of basically like how I would describe living with obsessive compulsive disorder is this world in which you are thrust into the darkest, saddest part of your brain, and then the most ridiculous image pops in there at the same time. We do this thing in therapy for OCD called exposure and response prevention, where you deliberately fantasticalize, I think that's a word, your deepest, darkest thoughts. So, like, I'll give this like plain example because we don't want to get too crazy. But the regular example that I give is like, if I'm afraid my partner is going to break up with me, right? I can't, I'm convinced. And what I think is going to happen is my partner's going to break up with me. All my friends are going to leave me. I'm going to lose my job because for some reason that is connected to that. And I'm going to die alone in the ditch. Like you just keep going down and down and down. But what you do to kind of get out of the spiral is you write a short story about your partner breaking up with you while unicorns are having sex in the background. And every time they come, your partner's telling you what a horrible person you are. So while you're in your darkest, deepest spiral of anxiety, like that version of the story pops into your head and kind of deadens the nerve. And that's kind of how I view the entirety of the tone of Touch Me. Like it's all these like, like sad moments, but like riddled with like ridiculousness because like mental health and living with these struggles are inherently ridiculous despite the seriousness of their nature.
Well, Addison, what makes you laugh? What is your sense of humor? What do you look for, whether you're trying to make it for other people to enjoy or you seek it
Yeah.
out yourself?
I am a huge fan of stupid, smart humor. Like I think the two things I can pull out of the top of my head are like BoJack Horseman or 30 Rock.
Mm.
It's like, there's some things that are like, again, talking about the like the serious clashing with the absurd. You have like birds that are paparazzi, and you have like, you're going to a restaurant and there are like two cockroaches and the trash gets thrown and they like fight each other. It's like that very stupid humor, but at the same time you're like dealing with something real. 30 Rock's a little bit different just because I love the like rolling out the tongue, but it is so biting that it's really funny. But it's not like I don't like, not that I don't like. It's like I don't seek out as much. Like I think something that's like a little more like vicious in terms of the humor. Like, but I do love the fantastical and the weird and the absurd.
Yeah.
That's why I'm
Well,
drawn towards animation. That's like why I love animation because of that
yeah.
that kind of combination.
Well, I think all that encapsulates and perfectly represents Touch Me. But there
Yeah,
are, from a consumer aspect, I got a lot out of it from, again, the relationships and the
yeah.
humor and the horror. But I have to wonder, as the creative mind behind this, what are the gold nuggets that you glean? Like, holy shit, we did it! Because mine actually comes from the first scene where Olivia gives the first of her monologues, and she smirks at the end. And I don't know if that
Mm.
was planned or that just her. It's like, holy shit, this is awesome! Just like,
Well, yeah, well, that's a great story because that was the first thing she shot
oh wow,
of the whole movie. She told me that she has dyslexia. She would tell you. She also has OCD like me, which is why we super bonded. Um, and she was like, instead of one request, Addison, please don't put that monologue on the first day. And I was like, don't you worry, we're not going to do it. I swear. Of course, a location is like, well, we can only shoot this day. And I was like, we have to put it on the first day. And she was like, okay. And she was like getting right off of another project, like literally 5 days before. And then, so she's one of those people that she's like, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And all of a sudden, just like she just locks in and then you're watching magic. So that first day, first take is what you see in the movie. It's the first take. And I think there's something so insane about that whole situation, but it always ends up happening this way on film because like there's something so magical about the first time you do something that like a lot of the times when you're looking through, unless like something is like you're wildly off base, which can happen sometimes, but also like it's a good choice, but let's get like the regular choice just in case we want one or the other. But there was something about Olivia's performance, and I think not to be like it's because she was dyslexic, but the way she memorized was literally having to see it, right? So like she couldn't just memorize the words because that wasn't going to help her. And so you could see her seeing what was happening. And it was a very bold swing. Everybody questioned me on it, and I had to stand my ground because I was like, I mean, I really want to do it. And I'm really glad we ended up doing it because it's like, it's weird to be like one of like a lot of people's favorite parts is the first 8 minutes, and you're like, well, there's like so much more of the movie, but I get it because it's like it's insane what we did shooting in we're in my own garage that we made to look like a therapist's office. Like it's the first day, like we have this with giant, almost it looks like a um telescope, like just a giant telescope, which is the zoom lens, as we just like slowly lock in on her face, and it just is to this day. Like I'm so glad I chose to do that. And while that is like my writing and obviously Dustin's incredible cinematography, like Olivia blew it out of the park. I can't imagine having anybody else in that role.
Well, the only thing that stands up to that are the array of Luke Taylor Pucci's tracksuits. And so it's like, what is a takeaway from you? Is it you get to like take a tracksuit home, you get to take a memento? Like, what are the props from the set that you really enjoyed?
Oh yeah, well there are two things that I have at home. I wish I was home. I'm in a hotel room in New York because I'm about to go to the New York premiere, but so I wish I could have shown you. But so the tentacle that spoiler redacted shoves somewhere I have in my house. And also Russell Effects, Sierra and Josh 3D printed a small version of the alien and gave it to the cast and the producers and me. So we all have our own little version of Brian, like in the sitting on my mantelpiece, which will happen. So, and earlier in the movie, there's a scene where Olivia comes out in a wolf mask, and that's from my first movie. So now I have the wolf mask, and I have the tentacle, and I have the little alien monster. So now I'm gonna have to find a way to put all three into the next movie because now I've started, I can't stop. It's got to keep going.
That's the obsessive compulsive disorder. Yeah, I
Yeah,
can't control myself. I can't control
yeah,
myself.
yeah, yeah,
Well, I'd like to think that you and I have some common ground. I have a soft spot for bad movies. You could say their betrayals are too many and their truths are too few. But what are your
yeah.
guilty pleasures? What are the things that you're like, you know what? Even if it's garbage, I love this one scene, or I can't wait to take this and use it in my next movie.
Ooh, oh man, that is an easy answer, and it's Baywatch, the original television show. Because there is something so inherently insane about this show that I love. There's this one episode I remember in the first season where Hasselhoff, no, it's not even Hasselhoff. So his like lifeguard underlings, like the pretty people, one of them, they're in an armored money truck on the bottom of like Santa Monica Pier, like drowning, like water slowly filling up because like a kid was in there and they eat it, whatever. And then so they're like, the stakes are they're gonna die. And then cross the B plot is these two other lifeguards are trying to win a volleyball tournament, and it's just like sexy slow motion volleyball. So it's like you're cutting between just like them in this armored truck in the bottom of the bottom of the ocean waiting to die to really sexy volleyball, and you forget that the other one exists until they cut back. And honestly, you can't. It's just pure joy. I just can't even describe the pure joy that I watch when I'm watching this show. Um, and if I'm lucky, I'll get to use that somewhere in some other thing as fodder for more writing because it just doesn't get any better than that sometimes.
No, I think the greats use that as a plot device. Tommy Wiseau, Miami
Yes.
Connection, terrible,
Yes.
terrible, terrible cinema, but it sticks in your brain, becomes part of your DNA.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. There's some things that you just endlessly quotable that even if they weren't necessarily the greatest, they just become a part of your vernacular and bring you closer with your friends.
Well, I'll tell you, I think my favorite part of the whole movie is when you first learn of Lou Taylor Pucci, Brian's
Hmm.
his weakness. It reminded
Yeah.
me of that scene in Bug's Life where the
Yeah.
mosquito he goes, "Hey, Bloody Mary!" Oh, positive. He drinks it and he just goes. So, so I was like, I'm wondering, are there things that you lifted like a Tarantino-y that like, yes, that's this, but just with a different skin?
Oh, so many of those. So like a lot of this I was talking about earlier is like, homages from like Japanese exploitation films. So it's like, so basically everything Tarantino took from Kill Bill, like I also used in homage. So like there's like, so you know what I mean? It is one of those things that's no no no. Like I love like Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2. Specifically, I like Volume 2, but Volume 1 is like one of my favorite movies. And it's funny because then you watch like Lady Snowblood and you just like there are just straight up shots that are just lifted from this. And like no shade, like yeah, because good artists steal, and that's like I think the thing that I'm most proud of is there's this anime by Satoshi Kon called Paprika, which is basically Inception before Inception was made. And there's a scene where this guy is in a dream and he's going inside another person, and you watch his hand kind of crawl inside a person. And so we got to do that later in the movie. I can't really spoil, I guess, why or when, but like I basically went to my effects people and I showed them the scene, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we can do that." So it's like we got to have a hand like crawling under his stomach, and I'm just like, "Come on!" And also like Silence of the Lambs scream, whether that joke is for like 10 people, but those 10 people I want to be friends with.
Totally. Well, Addison Hyman, he gets cinema, he knows cinema, he's giving you cinema. So check out Touch Me in limited release on March 27th and digital April 7. You are the man. It's been a pleasure. We'll catch you next time.
This is so lovely. Thank you.